Yay!
Hi, everyone. I am Anna.
And I'm Steena, and this is episode 1 of the Sag Moon Sisters Podcast.
Do you want to do that part again?
Yes,
Okay.
the whole thing. Go ahead.
Okay, so take 2. Hi, everyone. I am Anna.
And I'm Steena. This is episode 1 of the Sag Moon Sisters Podcast.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Pisces lunar eclipse, but we are recording this episode on Monday, September 2nd. The time is 1:23 p.m. We just want to take a look at the chart for when we are recording this as well to see what the energy is. And so, Steena, do you want to pull that up for us?
Perfect. Yep, I've got the chart here. We are looking at a Scorpio rising chart, which I think is super interesting because we are pulling ourselves out of the darkness and bringing ourselves into the light. There's a lot of stuff that could be said about this chart. I mean, today's the new moon in Virgo, and we're recording for the lunar eclipse in Pisces. So without getting into personal placements for myself or for you, we're starting new things. We're setting intentions to put effort into the things we love doing. So here we are.
We are embracing the energy and running with it.
As uncomfortable as it is.
Yes.
All right, cool. Let's talk about the time and all of that so that everyone knows.
Okay, so the Pisces lunar eclipse, so the Pisces full moon, is going to be happening on September 17th, 2024. That is a Tuesday. It is 10:34 p.m. So if you are east, that is the Eastern time zone. So if you're east of the Eastern time zone, it will be later than that. If you're west of the Eastern time zone, it will be earlier than that.
Great. One other thing that I just wanted to point out real quick for this chart as I'm looking at everything, there's some aspects going on between the outer planets. I don't want to talk about that too much right now because it's one of the things we're going to talk about later. However, I would like to highlight that we have Mercury at 23 degrees of Leo, and that is forming a square to Uranus in Taurus. But we have a trine with Chiron retrograde, and so with Chiron in Aries, that wound is all about being assertive and showing up and claiming agency over yourself, regardless of what other people's opinions might be. So I'm loving those aspects as we pull ourselves out of darkness and into the light.
Stepping out of the comfort zone, and that's for the recording chart for today.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So there are just 5 things that we're going to go over that are worth considering for this lunar eclipse. I would say that there's a lot of things that you can do during a full moon. There's a lot of things you can do during a new moon. When we have an eclipse, though, it's best to sit and meditate, because the things that need to end, the things that need to be released during a lunar eclipse, that's going to happen regardless of what you're doing. So definitely take the time to sit down and be with yourself, feel your emotions, acknowledge them. Even if you can't fully process them right now, that's okay. Acknowledging is the first step. There's lots of, great meditations on different astrology apps. You can use YouTube. And if you like to use tarot or oracle cards, then I would definitely Google for a lunar eclipse spread. those are just some things that you can consider doing. Just remember that with eclipses, the energy is there and it's strong and it's coming in to do what it needs to do. So take your hands off the wheel and let it ride.
Yeah. Like it's things are going to happen regardless of whether you do anything or not. Some people do really like to use the potent energy of eclipses to kind of like steer it, but there's other energies going on right now where you really don't need to do that. And in fact, it could make things a little more frustrating in a way. And we'll get into that, but it's you don't have to do anything with this energy this time. It's gonna happen on its own.
100%. So to kick it off, point number one is that the full moon is conjunct Neptune within just a couple degrees. Anna, you had some points that you wanted to make for that.
Yeah, and that actually follows off perfectly from what we were talking about with not trying to control the energy of this. So full moons are all about releasing. So there's an ending that's happening with this full moon, particularly since it's a lunar eclipse. And it's pretty close. Neptune is within 3 degrees of this eclipse that's happening, and so there's a strong energy there. Neptune it's very much kind of about the dream world. It's kind of about this watery depth. There's very much an intuitive quality to it. Um, and what's sort of happening with this full moon is that there's a light being shown on kind of the hidden watery realms of your life. And when these depths are illuminated and the dream is revealed to be just that, you can see that it's sometimes it's just a dream. Sometimes there's not a lot more with it. And when you think about the sun in Virgo right now for this full moon, Virgo is very much about practicality. And so with the sun in Virgo, it's casting its light onto this hidden, shadowy, watery realm, um, and showing us what dreams we can realistically work toward and which ones we should let go of. You know, it may show where we are unwilling to do the work to bring our dreams to reality. And it's an important time to remember that dreams without action are never brought to the surface. They're never brought into the material world. And so when you look at that balance of Pisces and Virgo, Virgo is very much about being here in the material world, in the physical, making things happen here. Well, Pisces it's kind of that in between space. It's that ethereal realm that's neither here nor there. And so you have to pull them together. There's almost this heaven and earth quality that happens. And so you can use the dream, but there may be ones you have to let go of at this point. It may be that there is a dream that might have to end, especially if you're not willing to put in the work for it.
The symbolism I'm getting for this is the Little Mermaid being the maiden. So she is totally googly eyes for Prince Eric, and she will literally do anything that she can to obtain this man that she has this over idealistic vision and expectation of. So then her dad finds out about everything. This is, I mean, without getting into too many technicalities with the mythology that follows this story, we're just going to say that Triton is Saturn and he's now coming in, and there's rules that need to be obeyed if you're living under my ocean type of vibes. And she gets really upset. She goes to see the sea witch. Ursula does her thing, and now all of a sudden Ariel is on land. She has legs, but what is she supposed to do now? She has had this dream that she's focused on this entire time, and now she has no plan. What was she going to do if she got what she wanted? If she got to come to land, she had legs. She doesn't know her fingers from her toes at this point, really. And so it's kind of like, does
What do you
this mean
call them? Oh, feet.
that it's like this she's on land, and does she still want Eric? Absolutely. She wants to go get her man, but she has no idea what she's doing. So it's not necessarily that a dream needs to completely change, but maybe we need to remove the over idealistic nature from that dream and apply some practicality. Otherwise, we're just floating along. And as much as I am an advocate for floating along, and Delulu is the Salulu, this is the lunar eclipse that's going to remove some of that energy so that you can turn your dreams into a reality.
Absolutely. There's certainly an aspect of a dream that's gonna be released at this point. It's things have to be practical.
So the last point that I wanted to make for our first point is that when it comes to Neptune, these Neptune transits show us where we don't have boundaries. And then with Saturn also being in Pisces, we're getting more of that, but like from a different angle. Neptune might say, I mean, look, you have enough boundaries. There's two of them. Why do you need more than two? But then Saturn is here and is saying, no, you need sufficient boundaries. And these are all the ways that you don't have them right now. At the same time, Neptune can come in and just flood out the boundaries in existence. And that's kind of the vibe that I get from a lunar eclipse. Conjunct Neptune is that's what's going to happen. Neptune's going to come in and completely flood out the boundaries. And normally this would be something that Saturn would not be happy about. But Saturn in Pisces wants to help you set the boundaries, the ones that need to be there. So we're letting go during this lunar eclipse. And I mean, that's what you would do with every lunar eclipse. But the lunar eclipse conjunct Neptune in Pisces, especially when we're still coming off the square to Jupiter and Gemini, there's a lot of expansion that still needs to happen, but we need to cut away some of the excess stuff and get down to the basics. So,
And that's where that energy that we talked about at the beginning comes in as well, with the not really being able to control this energy. Neptune's not about control. There's no control happening there. It's waiting it out at this point. It's being in that being getting comfortable with being uncomfortable for a little bit, of not having the answers and of just having to wait until it comes.
yep. As hard as it is to take your hands off the wheel,
Says the Virgo. Hi.
once you do that, it is freeing. But you have to make sure that you haven't just told yourself that you've taken your hands off the wheel. Make sure that you have actually taken your hands off the wheel. And once you do that and realize that you have done it and things didn't just like implode on you within 3 seconds, it's freeing, and you'll find comfort in not having to control things. um if you set aside your control and your worry and you just use that Venus is exalted in Pisces energy to just explore things, perfection, right? That's great. Do not be afraid to think about what your wildest dreams are throughout this lunar eclipse, but also understand that you set intentions for the Virgo new moon. And so there's going to be some qualities to Pisces that need to be let go of in order for those intentions to be in any way fruitful.
There's a lot about balance here. When when you do, like if you're somebody who has to control everything, that those moments where you just say, "Nope, I have to trust." They're terrifying. But I have personally found that things turn out even better than I could have imagined. Those times that I take my hands off the wheel, and let the universe kind of guide it. And so what you're kind of experiencing is this need for perfection that does come along with Virgo energy a lot of the time. It's balanced so much by that Pisces energy of going with the flow, allowing the current to take you wherever it is that you're supposed to go. You have to have that trust as well. And sometimes your plan is not necessarily what's going to be the right plan to get you where you want to or where you need to go.
Exactly. There's an element of fantasy, but there's also an element of reality. We're just like releasing the overly phantasmical things right now. And if there's one thing you can always count on me for, it's to give Disney analogies. So, in addition to our Little Mermaid comparisons, now we're looking at faith, trust, and pixie dust, baby. With Neptune, it just makes the transit like really even more interesting than it already was without the Neptune conjunction. But that actually is a good segue into our second point. And I want to talk about Venus a little bit. Venus recently was in opposition to Neptune in Pisces just before moving into Libra, the sign of her domicile. And there's been some really great things going on with Venus this year. And then there's been some other periods where it seems like there's not a lot going on. So, one of the first things to highlight is the Jupiter Uranus conjunction in Taurus earlier this year, ruled by Venus, as Taurus is the planetary ruler of Venus. Venus is the planetary ruler of Taurus. I totally got that backwards, but that's okay. Then we had a Venus cazimi, or a superior conjunction between Venus and the Sun. And while we have the cazimi, when Venus is in the heart of the Sun, for a period before the cazimi and a period after the cazimi, she's combust. She's beneath the sun's rays and we can't see her. A couple weeks pass by, and then Venus gets about 15 degrees away from the sun, and that is when she makes her debut as the evening star. And as that happened, Venus formed a square with Uranus. And so the cazimi was the rebirth. And then now we have this aspect with Uranus that just said, we're really not doing things the way that we used to do them anymore. That's over. We're not going to do that anymore. Then we, move forward a little bit. Venus gets into Virgo. Mercury stations retrograde shortly after that, comes back, and Venus is like, hey, Mercury, I forgot something back that way. Since you're going, can you do the thing for me? And Mercury's like, sure, I got you. And then we had the Mercury retrograde in Leo, and Venus continued on. Now she's in Libra. While she was in Virgo, we had not only that opposition to Neptune, and at one point also the opposition to Saturn, but there was also the trine with Uranus and Taurus. And now Venus has moved into Libra. which is the same sign where the solar eclipse is going to happen. So when we're talking about Virgo and details and getting organized and all of this type of stuff, relationships and one-on-one dynamics maybe aren't where your brain goes immediately, but with this lunar eclipse being the precursor to the solar eclipse that's coming up, this is still 100% about relationships, but it's making sure that your ducks are in a row. You're on your yellow brick road going towards your emerald city. And once you have the semantics, the details, all of that figured out and what you're doing, you're less likely to be distracted by shiny things. Instead, you find your Tin Man, you find your Scarecrow, you find your Lion. And these are people that fit into your life that aren't trying to deter you from your Emerald City. By the time you realize someone has pulled you off your path and taken you to the field of poppies or worse, they reveal themselves to be a flying monkey. It's too late. It's never too late. It's just, it takes a lot more to get back on course, and there's usually a lot of resentment involved in that. So Venus is the star of 2024.
For sure.
100%. So be mindful of all of that. And of course, during this, lunar eclipse, it is 100% about you, what you need to do in your life in reality, what you need to do in your life from a spiritual perspective. But you have to get yourself aligned with yourself in order to be in a position where you can bring other people into your life that are going to complement your dreams and goals and aspirations instead of trying to deter you from them, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
Exactly. Yeah, I honestly, I can't remember if you mentioned it or not, but I think it's kind of important to point out as well that basically the moment that Venus moved into Libra, it trined Pluto, and so you've got that kind of community, bigger picture, societal aspect of Aquarius, where when Pluto was in Aquarius just before coming back into Capricorn, and then Venus in Libra. So you're looking at this actually kind of like it's a supportive energy despite Pluto being so scary. There's a big transformation that's happening there in like what Venus is willing to do, kind of in terms of almost like keeping the peace within the community, but with the transformation that she's experienced, it's also about being willing to be true to herself and be assertive within both like interpersonal relationships and within the community. It's just another reflection of this deep transformation that's happening within our relationships as a whole, you know?
Yeah, no, most certainly. When I think about Pluto, I think about the things beneath the surface that we're siphoning off so that better things can grow. And that fits in with the whole harvest theme that's associated with Virgo. It also, the trine with Pluto was a great way to start this transit, but Pluto has now moved into Capricorn and will still be at the 29th degree of Capricorn as Venus is finishing her transit through Libra, which is a square. So there's been a lot of work that's been done this year. I mean, we can go back as far as the lunar eclipse in Libra back in March before the solar eclipse in Aries in April. And there's definitely been things that were released, and it was almost like having to set those things aside so that we could take the meaningful action that we needed to within our lives in alignment with the solar eclipse in Aries. And now, there's that harmonious trine that, with trines having the nature of Jupiter, sometimes that growth can be uncomfortable, but I don't walk into a trine thinking this is going to be a shit fest. There's just the things that we all want are there, but there might be, some tweaks that need to be made. And a trine having the nature of Jupiter has no problems with moving or removing or whatever it needs to do to get you to that point where growth is possible. And so it almost feels like a reward for all of the work that has been done in relationships so far this year, but it's also kind of a calm before the storm. Now, mind you, this is going to be the final storm for Pluto in Capricorn. There, I'm sure we could go back at some point and check and see all of the different times that Venus in Libra squared Pluto since 2008. And it would probably give us some very insightful details about things. But Pluto will not be back in Capricorn again for 200 plus years. This is the final transformation between Venus in Libra and Pluto in Capricorn. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that that Venus in Libra square Pluto in Capricorn, that's not till the end of this month. So you do have some time before that.
Cool. Okay, so then we can move into our third point, which is that Mars is squaring the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra. This is also conjunct Black Moon Lilith in Libra. Anna, I will let you make your points on this one.
Okay, yeah, and actually that's a good transition as well because with when you're looking at eclipses, like even though the eclipses or yeah, when you're looking at eclipses, even though right now the nodes of the moon, so like the North Node and the South Node, are technically out of sign, they're still in Aries and Libra right now. But being close enough to those nodes is what causes eclipses to happen. And on September 3rd, which is tomorrow in terms of when we are recording, that Venus is actually going to be conjunct the South Node. And so the South Node, there is kind of this pouring out aspect. There is kind of this releasing that's happening again. And so you're seeing that with Venus. You're seeing that happening with relationships once again. And so it's kind of important to bring that up, And then the day of the eclipse, Mars is going to be square to the nodes. And so since the nodes are always opposite each other, the North Node and the South Node are always opposite each other. They're always in opposite signs. Mars is technically forming what's known as a T-square, and so it's square to both the North Node and the South Node. And Mars is in Cancer. It will be in Cancer at that point, sorry. And so you're looking at kind of Mars is bringing this sort of determination and an action into the ideas of home, family, the past, but it can also potentially bring conflict. And when you're looking at the energy of a square, that is of the nature of Mars. And so there is more likely to be this sense of conflict in some ways. And so this tension is formed between purpose, which is kind of the North Node, and comfort of the South Node. There's this tension between forward momentum of moving toward that destiny and safety. You know, if you South Node energy is sort of like that's your comfort zone. That's where you're safe. You don't really want to leave there, but in order to move toward the things you want to, you have to step out of that comfort zone, and that's kind of what's coming up here with this square. And as well, there is this tension between who you have been and who you can be, you know? And so you're looking at it kind of the emotional impact of your actions, as well as how your past, your home, your family, your feelings of security impact those actions. And what you're looking at in kind of the overall scheme of things is how do those factors, your past, your home, your family, things like that, how are those influencing the actions that you take in order to either move toward your purpose, move toward your destiny, or maintaining that comfort? Like, are the actions you're taking, are they protecting you? Are they kind of keeping that, are they keeping you closed off, or are they pushing you toward your purpose? Because I mean, when you think about cancer, cancer being the crab, it's got that hard shell. It does protect itself and keep itself safe. And so you're looking at, okay, are you willing to take that chance, take that risk, and move toward what you're supposed to be doing? Or do you want to stay in your shell? There is definitely that tension that happens between those things, and Mars there is emphasizing that.
Definitely. There's been like there's a lot going on with Mars in Cancer. You know, we're going to have Mars is going to spend all but a small chunk of time after moving through Cancer. It'll go into Leo up to 6 degrees. It's going to station retrograde on December 6th and then move back into Cancer. And then we're going to have this like 4-month block of time, essentially, where Mars is going to retrograde back into Cancer, station direct, and then make its trek back through Cancer once again. And thinking about Cancer and the crab symbolism, the Mars retrograde is almost like the molting period where your emotional nature is too big now for the shell that you live within. And molting looks really freaking difficult. I was watching Howie the Crab on TikTok when she was going through her last molt, and it does not look comfortable, you know? And I firmly believe that's where the term crabby comes from. Like, it's just not fun. But then you break free of that shell. You take some time to realize that you broke free of the shell, process your emotions around it, and then you start to harden again into this new shell that is big enough to hold you in your enlightenment and all of that. And so it's an important part of that overall Mars story, but it's one of the earliest, like it's the beginning of the Mars story. And whatever's happening now, however this is showing up in your life, probably feels really difficult, but it needs to be done. You need to do the molts when we have the retrograde. And if you're not ready to do the molts, then after that retrograde is over and Mars moves into Leo again, things are just going to be more difficult. If there's
Definitely.
anything astrology teaches us, it's to lean into your transformations, to work with the energy instead of against it. As difficult as it can be to work with the energy, it is much more difficult dealing with the consequences for working against it. Um, and the final thing that I want to add to this is in reference to the nodes. Um, the south node is definitely your comfort zone, and the north node is energy that you should aspire to embody during the period that the north node is in that particular sign. In my experience, the real rewards come when you get to a place where you can embody your natal north node as well as the transiting north node simultaneously. That makes Saturn very happy in my own personal experience. So, with all of that said, I don't want to tell you to just completely avoid your south node, because those are your superpowers. That is energy that you have perfected either earlier in this life or in your past lives. It's your gifts. It's use the energy of that to work towards fulfilling the purpose of the north node.
So you can use those south node gifts to propel you towards your north node, toward the things that you want to achieve in this life. And I was thinking about that. I was looking at my notes. One of the things I kind of forgot to like note was, the fact that the north node is currently in Aries and the south node is in Libra. And so at the same time, you're kind of looking as well at the self versus others, the me versus the we. What sort of actions are you taking just for yourself, and what are you taking for, the good of all, or creating harmony or balance or justice? What are you forging your own path, or are you just attempting to appease others? And looking at how your emotions, how your past, how your family play into those actions. And there's nothing like, with the north node being in Aries, there's definitely this encouragement to own your authenticity, to own your independence. But that doesn't mean you ignore needing to create harmony sometimes in relationships. And that's where that Venus energy comes back in, because you absolutely can just go do your own thing and screw whatever everybody else thinks. And cool. Yeah, great. But you're going to come up on conflict sometimes. And, you know, with the South Node being in Libra, sometimes it is about like releasing some of that concern when it comes to appeasing others. But that doesn't mean that there should not be any type of balance. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be any type of negotiation. The one of the things about being human is that there are other humans here and we have to work with them sometimes. And so you have to take other people into consideration. And it's achieving this, it's not always comfortable, but achieving this sort of, to use the word that I've used many times now, balance between being who you are and then being that person within a group, within a couple, within whatever, within a partnership. How can you be entirely yourself and entirely part of that relational system?
Definitely. I feel like one of the big lessons that people in the world now, especially, like Gen Z and millennials, is seeing how much codependency is kind of ingrained into the things that we do every day. If we're not in a position where, maybe we're with someone or even have the ability to be codependent, and codependency isn't always a it's not always an intentional thing. Sometimes it's just what happens over time. It's one of the many natures in relationships, but we see so often people just sacrificing their goals and their dreams for another person. And there's a way to do that, and there's a way to not do that. I think that there's a self-sacrificial nature to Virgo as well. Virgo will, sacrifice maybe me time, what I want, all of these things, because Virgo is trying to serve others. And there's a lot of different ways that that can show up. But with Pisces, it's like that same energy on crack, because it's where Venus is exalted. It's not just like working within a group or structure and making sure that things run smoothly. You have a huge group of people trying to accomplish the same thing. Virgo can come in and iron out the details and make sure that that group of people works well, or at least efficiently. It's not to say there's, not going to be arguments and things like that. That just happens sometimes. But when we look at it from the Pisces perspective, it's quite literally like ignoring red flags, ignoring turbulence, ignoring all of these things, and just push it out of your line of vision and just ride the waves. Just ride it. You know what I mean? And there's a time and a place for that. Unfortunately, this isn't a fantasy novel. So we have real world things that we have to deal with. And
yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, the last thing I was going to say
Mhm.
is just like, really, there's a light and shadow side to every sign, every archetype. Think of the shadow side of Pisces. I'm just a pretty fairy princess with no brain cells, and I am just living in pleasure and bliss and don't know which way's up and which way's down, and everything's covered in glitter. There's
Feel like
times that works. As a Pisces Venus, that there is a time that works, but it's not everlasting. I'm sorry. I need to watch this next time I get infatuated with someone and remind myself nothing gold can stay.
I feel like sometimes Pisces forgets that they have a body, you know? It's
That
like they
is
don't always exist here. But I mean, I think if you look at like what body part Pisces rules, it's the feet. That's the part that's supposed to keep us connected to the earth. It keeps us literally grounded. And so that's important for Pisces to remember, is that sure, keep your head in the clouds. That's fine, but keep your feet on the ground.
flipping your fins. You won't get too far. Okay. I am so for all of my opportunities to make Little Mermaid jokes and references. No one would ever guess that Ariel is my favorite Disney princess.
Oh no, never.
Okay. So let's go ahead and segue into point 4. I'm going to let you start with this one. This is Mercury in Virgo opposing Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And we want to highlight the healer aspects for both Virgo and Pisces.
Yeah. So when you're looking at this eclipse that's happening, a lot of times it's important to look at what else is going on in the signs. And so you've got the sun in Virgo, and you'll also have Mercury there at the same time. And then in Pisces, you're going to, of course, have the moon in Pisces. But then you've got Neptune there, which we talked about earlier. And Saturn is also there. And Saturn, you're looking at boundaries and restrictions and limitations and stuff like that. But you're also looking at discipline, at practicality, at, maintaining routines and holding yourself accountable. There's a lot of accountability that comes with Saturn. And then Mercury, you've got the ideas, you've got, intellect, and just kind of the way that you think, the way that you communicate. But there's also there's an in-between element that happens with Mercury, because Mercury is related to the Greek god Hermes, and Hermes was able to move between the physical realm and the realm of the dead. He was one of the only ones that was allowed to do that. And so you've got this ability, sort of like Pisces, to be both of the earth and of um, heaven, of the ethereal realms. Sorry, my brain just like. We both have ADHD, by the way, so you're gonna have some fun times with us.
Two Sagittarius moons with ADHD. What could possibly get done?
um, so when you're looking at Saturn and Mercury together, I mean, they're opposite, so they're not completely working against each other, you know. Something that I've mentioned before, it's that it's oppositions are like when two companies are, they're working on a merger. They've got representatives sitting at either end of a boardroom table, and they each have an idea of what they want, but they're negotiating. They have a common goal. They're focused on the same thing. And so you've got Mercury that, especially Mercury and Virgo, that has all of these details and that wants to be practical. But then you've got Saturn over there in Pisces that's trying to bring almost like an emotional discipline structure in some ways. It's there's a practicality to Saturn in Pisces as well. And so there's an emphasis on what work we are willing to do, what planning is necessary, what organization is needed, to create a discipline structure designed to develop our dreams. And it's a chance for us to organize our thoughts and ideas for the purpose of practicality and discipline. And when you look at the signs of Pisces and Virgo, they are both about healing in different ways. Pisces is more of the emotional and spiritual healing, and Virgo it's more of the physical healing and tending to the body and the material needs. And what it reminds us is that Virgo and Pisces, they're not opposites in a way that is not compatible. They're intimately and intricately intertwined. One cannot exist without the other. And so you're looking at this idea of holistic healing. And holistic healing comes from the idea that all aspects of a person must be tended to in order for a person to feel whole. And so the compassion in Pisces is necessary for the physical healing that comes from tending to and caring for your body. And the practicality of Virgo allows for the elimination of things that are harmful to spiritual and emotional well-being, and the implementation of practices that can support holistic health. And so you're looking at this integration of both the spiritual emotional realm and the physical material well-being, and bringing them together. And Saturn and Mercury can absolutely do that, because they can help you develop a practice to develop systems and structures that will help you to take care of all aspects of yourself. There is a wholeness that can be achieved when we have the details and the organization and the discipline to stick to it.
Definitely. One of the things that really sticks out to me about this as well is that, symbolically speaking, your sun sign is representative of your soul. It's your life path. And we have your soul in the grounded environment of Virgo. Alternatively, the moon represents your physical body. And a great way to remember that is in knowing that the sun receives the sun gives its light to the moon. Without the existence of the sun, I mean, everything would just cease to exist, but without getting that technical, without the light of the sun, the moon isn't illuminated. So we have the soul sitting in a grounded sign that's about healing from a physical body perspective. And then we have the moon that represents the body floating through the ethereal realm of Pisces, which rules things like spirituality and the subconscious and all of that. And every astrologer just gets really happy with happy chemicals being released from the brain at alarming, in a good way, speeds when you find a pattern, balance, or synchronicity in something that it seems like maybe wasn't even intentional, but then you break the pieces away and it is intentional. It is by design that it works this way. But just like your body is not alive without your soul, your your emotional nature doesn't exist. It's not in a place where it can do well without we need some grounding. I mean, even massive ships out in the middle of the ocean ground with anchors and things like that. So it is very hard to tie down Piscean energy. Sometimes all you need to do is envision yourself as a tree. You have the roots. So many meditations use this this kind of metaphor. You're standing on the ground, you're a tree. You have the roots that go into the earth, and then you open yourself up so that your soul can leave your body temporarily, and you're astral projecting or whatever it is. But while you're gone over yonder looking at things, your body is rooted into the ground. And that is what this is about, is making sure that you are able to stay rooted in the ground, even if you are someone who has a bunch of mutable placements like me. You still have to be rooted into the ground. And if I have just described you and you don't have an earth sun, I am sorry. I props to you 100%, because I do not. If you have placements in every single one of the mutable signs and you do not have your sun in an earth sign, or I would even take Libra because it's Saturn's exaltation. That sounds like really like so difficult. So anyway, the point being that both of these things work in tandem with one another. One doesn't exist without the other. And it's not like one side has to die or any. It's just, think about like actual death of your body. It is the eternal sleep for your mortal body, 100%, but it is not the eternal sleep for your soul. So it's not that your soul ceases to exist, it's that it ceases to exist within the body, and so the body is dead. I could talk about Saturn being the Grim Reaper. I could talk about like the ways that Pluto ties into this, but we're not going to do that. I could do like a 3-day webinar on that topic alone. Instead, what we can talk about is things kind of more from a collective perspective, specifically dealing with the outer planets. So we're not in a point in time right now where any of the outer planets are going to make exact aspects to one another. But when we're just keeping things within a couple degree ranges for these aspects, we have Uranus in Taurus and Pluto in Capricorn. That's a trine. And then in the middle of them is Neptune in Pisces, which forms a sextile to both of both Uranus and Pluto. Looking forward, we're going to have obviously Pluto will move back into Aquarius later this year, and where it'll stay until 2044. In 2025, we're going to have a conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, and I do not consider Saturn a generational planet. It is still very much specific to an individual, while it does move slower. But these outer planets interacting with each other and interacting with the slower moving inner planets, that's a huge deal because neither one of them is going anywhere quick. Those are the transits that really do last a long time. And so I would really I encourage everyone, look in your individual chart and looking at the generational planets. We're just going to do Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Look between 25 and 29 degrees of fixed signs and mutable signs. Those are going to be that's where your squares are going to come from. You can also look to that degree range of signs of the same element. That's going to give you your trines and stuff like that. And then the same thing for cardinal, except we're going to look at the very early degrees of fixed signs as well. So that's going to be really interesting with Taurus in the late degrees, or Uranus in the late degrees of Taurus, and then also Pluto in the in the early degrees of Aquarius, because that's Uranus. Jesus, I cannot today. Taurus Taurus and Aquarius are both fixed signs. The other two fixed signs are Leo and Scorpio. So there's going to be a lot going on, I think, in terms of all that. And if you need help with any of that, both Anna and I do offer readings. We have, our books where you can schedule in advance, but in the past, both of us have just on a whim decided we wanted to read some stuff and do readings for donation only on our Instagram accounts. Those will be in the show notes. So if you're interested in getting a more specific look at your chart, then don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us on that. Are there other points that you wanted to make about the outer planet energy?
Um, yeah, I think with Uranus being so involved in this one that there's, the element of surprise, the element of the unexpected that could happen, particularly since it's in Taurus, you've got that sort of like real world thing, the material thing happening. Um, but it's like something could show up in the real world that was unexpected, some sort of like unexpected consequence of an imbalance between like dreams and reality, between intuition and intellect, the big picture and the details. It really could show like what happens when these things are not in harmony, when you've maybe got too much focus on the big picture, particularly since uh, this eclipse is in Pisces. There may be too much emphasis on the big picture, and you may need some more details. And it could be that something comes up where something happens in your life, like in the real world, where you missed some details, and they were important, and now you have to go back and fix it. You know, but it could also show where we can revolutionize our material existence and develop more independence, and using our intuition to guide that, using our planning, using our practicality. Um, it's both of those kind of ideas are necessary in order to create the independence that we need within our lives, and to create independence within like financial independence or other sorts of material sort of independence. I think those things are kind of important to remember when it comes to Uranus being involved as well.
Definitely. When I think of Taurus, the word I think about the most, I think, is cultivate. And with Uranus being retrograde now until January 30th, 2025, it is an opportunity to think about what you are cultivating and if it aligns with what you say your values are. Um, there's another astrologer that I listen to who says that dreams are kind of like the stars, but your values are like lampposts in the city. And so there's a very real difference between what your aspirations are and what your values are. And I think it's really easy to get those types of things kind of like commingled in a way that doesn't really serve anyone. An example that I can think of is saying that you value having your dream job. I don't know that that's really a value. It's something that you put a lot of emphasis on, but that's one of the stars. That's one of the dreams that you have that you work toward in hopes that you'll be able to fulfill it at some point in your life. But what you would value in that is putting effort into things every day that you actually enjoy, putting effort into things that you find purpose in, because then it's like as you're plowing the fields or building something that's more Capricorn probably, but um, as you are building things, are you going to be the one that gets to enjoy the fruits of your labor? Or are you working for someone else who is going to continue to benefit from the fruits of your labor? So, really, between now and January 30th, I mean, these are big decisions to make. These are big realizations to have. It's not like you're not going to have a Uranian thing happen in your life that didn't really make that much of an impact. You know what I mean? These are going to be those big things that happen. Some of them are fated, but some of them are things that happen because of the decisions and the choices we make. We are ever changing and ever evolving. So it's difficult to say, like, oh, don't make any changes in the area of your life in your chart that's ruled by Taurus through January 30th. That's like close to impossible. But really think about what you're cultivating and if it's what you want to cultivate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the end of the points that we wanted to make. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. The energy is kind of crazy right now. It's eclipse season now, you guys. Like it's gonna be crazy for a while. But I guess some things that we can highlight to look forward to that we'll definitely be talking about more is we'll have another Jupiter Saturn square later this year. Next year, the nodes switch signs. They'll move into Pisces and Virgo. We still have a while of Saturn in Pisces. Once Saturn starts to dip into Aries, Saturn's in its detriment in Aries and is exalted in Libra. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. I would also like at some point to do an episode or a series of episodes where we're talking about Uranus moving into Gemini, like that. That is a big thing. One of my and I know for Anna, you too, we don't fearmonger with astrology. That is like the opposite of what we do. We want to make things as easy as possible to understand. We want to remove any, like gatekeeping or condescension that you might feel from other places online. It's kind of one of the things that is just always going to exist within social media and things like that. But what I will say, there's a lot of fear mongering about Uranus and Gemini. And during the last few instances of Uranus being in Gemini, we have like the colonization of the United States. We have the Civil War. We have the United States moving into World War II. The collective astrology, and when I say collective astrology, I mean those three outer planets that we were just talking about, were forming squares and oppositions to each other. And this time, when Uranus is in Gemini, we're looking at trines between Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini, and then sextiles between both of those planets and Neptune in Aries. So we're talking favorable aspects versus challenging aspects, and I think that we're really going to see that play out for the overall benefit of the people. That said, there's just so much going on everywhere. So it's not going to be a cakewalk, and not everyone is going to get what they want and all of that stuff. But I think that we're moving towards a world that has a little more empathy and compassion than the one that we live in right now. And
Definitely.
I am excited for that.
And I think, just with Neptune sitting, it is at the final degree of Pisces, right? Or is it at 28?
I think by the time we put this episode out, it has moved to 20. Yeah, it's at 28 degrees for the
Okay.
lunar eclipse in Pisces.
Yeah. So I think this time, while Neptune is in Pisces, and while Saturn is in Pisces, there is definitely this emphasis on developing that compassion, um, in ways that are practical, in ways where we also establish boundaries and limits, so that way we can turn around and give that compassion to others in a way that does not harm ourselves. But, it's one of those, like, these aren't things that necessarily need to be worried about yet, but they are on the horizon. And so it's important to be aware of them, at least. And of course, we'll cover that in more detail in the coming months.
Yes. And it puts more emphasis on how important it is to align yourself with yourself right now.
Yes.
Because starting with that solar eclipse in Libra, we're putting more emphasis on how we interact with other people again. There's more relationship stuff. And then we just have all of this stuff going on with the outer planets. And sure, we have, favorable aspects like trines and sextiles. That doesn't mean that they are easy, especially when we're talking about collective astrology and outer planets. You might experience sextiles in your natal chart, or sextiles in transiting planets as they aspect your natal placements. But when we are looking at the collective astrology, everyone is going through stuff together. And you need to know who you are and what you want before you can put yourself in a position where you can truly be of service to others. And I mean, that is today we're recording this on the new moon in Virgo. That is the name of the game. Get yourself situated so that you can be of service to others. And you guys, we live in a capitalistic hellscape, okay? So when we talk about being of service to others, myself included, it is just, ugh, in my head. Brother, ugh, like when we think about it. But for a lot of us, especially if you don't have like big families or children or any of that stuff, the service that you can provide to other people it happens while you're working for someone else. And then you're so unmotivated and tired and defeated when you get home from your 40 hours a week that all you can do is doom scroll. And so you got to align yourself, and then you need to let go of the too dreamy escapist tendencies. That is the goal of that lunar eclipse in Pisces. Then we can start looking at how we interact with other people again.
To focus on that holistic healing, to taking care of every aspect of yourself, so that way you have the space to take care of others as well.
100%. It's wild to think about how back in the day, Pluto and Leo generation, single family homes, generational family homes, all of that type of stuff. And then it was like when all of the baby boomers were born, that is, I mean, in hindsight anyway, looking back, that is really when, in the United States at least, we started moving away from that like tight knit family thing. You talk to people that were Gen X, and sometimes they didn't even feel welcome in their own home when they're growing up, because it was just kids are cost money, and I know a lot of millennials also felt that way. So it's just, we can't it's easy to blame the last generation for a bunch of shit. And again, it's the name of the game. We all do it, right? But I've also seen what happens when Gen Z and millennials come together to get something done, or Gen X and millennials come together to get something done, or Gen X and the boomers come together and get something done. There are some bridging of the gaps that has started, but this thing goes so deep and is so all over the place. Like, it's going to take time and effort from everyone. And instead of sitting in a place of blame, whether you're blaming yourself, you're blaming the older generation, whatever it is, we exist in the context of everything and everyone who has come before us, right? Just like Kamala said, and I love that regardless of anyone's political views, that's not what we're here to talk about, but there is truth in that statement. And who knows how far away from the next just clean slate for planet Earth and repopulating and things like that. But unless that happens, which means the end of existence for all of us, there's no magic button that anyone's going to come in here and push that's going to make everyone get along with each other. And there are some variances from just standard difference in opinion that shouldn't be tolerated 100%. But we have to start respecting each other again. Even someone who is the complete opposite of you, as much as you disagree on things, you can find something in common with just about anyone. Yes, even that terrible person that you just thought of in your head, probably a public figure. When I said that, you have things in common even with them.
It's that Libra energy.
Yes.
And the way to cultivate that is compassion.
Balance and harmony and working together to get things done. Easier said than done, but
we can do it. We'll get there.
Changing the world starts with changing yourself. So right now, with this, this cycle with the new moon in Virgo and the lunar eclipse in Pisces, it is focusing on the things for yourself. And then when we move into October, we can look at that applying to other people again. And for those of you that live in the northern hemisphere, I find it much easier to get along with people when it's crisp outside and we're drinking cider and going to the pumpkin patch. So
absolutely. All right. So before we go, I did want to mention a couple dates in case anyone wants to look back in their journals or whatever to see what might have been going on around these times, what themes might have come up. So the last eclipse in Pisces was February 26th, 2017. That was a solar eclipse. The last lunar eclipse in Pisces was September 16th, 2016. So a couple of notes to keep in mind. I think it was quite a while before that, the last one that was a north node eclipse, but those are still important dates to keep in mind.
Definitely. If you have any placements between, to keep it tight, we'll say 23 to 27 degrees of Pisces, that's going to be a conjunction with this lunar eclipse. If you have placements at 23 to 20, we can do it 23 to 27, a Virgo will be in opposition 23 to 27 of Gemini or Sagittarius will be a square. So those are definitely things to watch for. You know, for me personally, this lunar eclipse is happening right on my north node, so I have been looking forward to this forever. And we would love to hear from you guys as well. So if you have placements in your chart, you have stories that you'd like to share with us, please do so. It's fascinating.
Oh yeah,
Nothing lights
absolutely.
me up more.
And to do that, I think we're going to put this up on Spotify, so you can comment on Spotify or whatever platform. Um, we have, each of us have our Instagram pages, our Instagram accounts. You can message us there. Mine is at wandering.star.wisdom. And
And mine is at Sarcastic Sea Goat.
all right, so you can find us there. Hopefully soon we'll have more ways that you can reach out to us. Remember that uh, if you want to book a reading, if you want to dive a little deeper into your own chart or any of the transits that may be happening, go to our Instagram pages. That's the easiest way to do it for right now. Check out our content. Steena's is really funny. She's got some great memes.
I'm just here to make jokes and have a good time.
Yep. All right. I believe that's everything. Yes.
I think so too. Remember your life rafts and your life vests and whatever you need to not drown during a lunar eclipse in Pisces conjunct Neptune.
Yes. Very, very watery. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful eclipse season. I hope it's kind to you. And we'll
We'll
talk to
see
you
you
next
next
time.
time.
All right. Bye.